What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages? Welcome to a brand new gamer section live. Hopefully, I'm not botting, hopefully, no technical difficulties, but I am KANO, the brutally honest gamer. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Oliver. Online, I go as the Narwhalnut, and I'm the developer of Belle Boomerang.
Okay, cool, cool. So, first question I have to ask, like, what was the first game that you actually played that made you fall in love with gaming?
Oh man, um, one of the first ones I really remember is Super Mario Sunshine on the Nintendo
Mm-hmm.
GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, my grandparents had a GameCube over at their house that we would use, and I'd spend a lot of time playing that game and wasn't very good at it. Never got very far, but
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, that definitely got me started on a kick playing video games for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So, like, what's the GameCube like? What's the first niche of like playing games? Like, you played a lot of games on the GameCube.
Um, Yeah, I would kind of say so. I played a lot of games on GameCube, but I also played like later when they got the Virtual Console. Like not much after on like the Wii. I would play a
Mm-hmm.
ton of retro games, like Super Nintendo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was really fun. And then of course with the Wii, I would play like Mario Galaxy and Mario Kart and the stuff that was on there.
Mm-hmm. Classics. Those are some of my favorite games too. That's the nostalgia moment, man. You bringing back memories, man. Facts. So, like, man, how did you get into game development?
um, I'd say a big thing was at some point I started playing around with ROM hacking
Mm-hmm.
for games like Super Mario World, and I wasn't very good, but I loved like swapping around color palettes and just like testing out different like level elements and playing it and seeing if I could get anything to even work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that snowballed into like, well, it's so cool I can make it using like these parts. Now, what if I could get like my own drawings and my own little pieces in there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I kind of looked more and more into game development after that.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, like, currently, are you a solo developer or do you have a studio? And if so, how did your studio come together?
I am mainly a solo developer. I do artwork on some other projects. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as this game that I've just released, I'm just solo. I um, tried out a few different programs over a few years and used like YouTube and stuff to try to learn programming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so almost everything I know about game development comes from just like free YouTube videos or developers talking on interviews and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so like if you had to pick like a person or a team that inspired you to develop games, like what studio or team like really inspired that development of games in your opinion?
Man, I don't know. As you can kind of already tell by a lot of the games I mentioned that I played when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely love like Miyamoto's kind of stuff, like Mario and Zelda. Those are really big ones for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'd say a lot of like I have like I really love like designing creatures and characters and like making making characters that serve some purpose outside of just like their visual purpose. So from like a gameplay standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'd say that comes from I had a period where I played a ton of Pokemon. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
all like the Ken Sugimori artwork and that kind of stuff, I'd say those are pretty big inspirations. I don't know if I could pick one though.
Hey, like there's a lot of inspiration behind a lot of people's creations of games, and like I said, it seems like to me, with your inspiration is on Nintendo, like nostalgia, old school games and stuff like that. That's what where I see where your game that you have right now is out. That's where I
Yeah,
see the
definitely.
inspiration from. I definitely see that. So like, besides Bella Boomerang, like what other games have you created, or is this your actual first game that you created?
So this is my first game that I've tried selling commercially, and my first game that I put on any sort of console. Before
Mm-hmm.
this, I've done. I did a little RPG that I worked on for I don't know. I think it was like 7 months or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was when I was first learning to use Game Maker Studio, and I've also done a few game jam games. So things made in like a week or two.
Okay.
and also games for like friends and like my siblings, just like fun little week or 2 week projects that I never posted publicly. They were meant just to be gifts.
Okay, that's very interesting. Very interesting. So we about to talk about Belle Boomerang for the
Mhm.
remainder of the podcast. This is a question like, what made you come up with the name Belle Boomerang?
Um, well, pretty early on, I knew that I wanted the main weapon to be a boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at some point in development, I kind of like started tossing out like bits and pieces of the game and building um, like the engine and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, I decided like I don't really like how this is turning out, and I kind of threw out a bunch of stuff I had made.
Mm-hmm.
But like the only like main mechanic I kept was the boomerang. I really liked how that worked in my original version of the game, and I was like, okay, let's just think about it all again. We'll just keep the main character, who stayed mostly the same, and the boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So I wanted the boomerang to be very upfront because that was to me a very important part of the game early on. Um, and then my grandma, her middle name was Belle,
Mm-hmm.
spelled the same way it is in Belle Boomerang. And so when I was trying to come up with names for the characters, I thought like, oh, Belle Boomerang's got a nice ring to it, and I thought it would be fun if the little collectibles were bells as well.
Right.
So
Right.
there wasn't like a super deep meaning behind the name. It was just like I thought thematically it was really fun, and it kind of I like the alliteration. It's kind of quick and sounds different from a lot of other names.
Mm-hmm. Definitely interesting. Interesting. So like. The main question I want to ask you about Belle Boomerang is like, what engine are you using for this game, and why you decided to use this engine?
So for this game, I'm using Game Maker Studio 2,
Mm-hmm.
and um, like I said, I got into it probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I think when I was making that little RPG as like a test, I found that it's just really accessible for solo developers. It makes it
Mm-hmm.
you still have a lot of control over how certain things are programmed, but it's like a little easier and a little quicker to like get prototypes done and stuff. So I
Okay.
found for my
Okay.
workflow, it just works really well. I tried a few different programs. I have worked in Unity a little bit, and I do really like Unity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I were making different kinds of games, I would probably choose Unity because I think it is a lot better for like 3D stuff. But again, for my workflow, I think Game Maker's just been really nice. I feel like it can get stuff out pretty fast without sacrificing too much control, as opposed to like an engine that grabs on a little bit more and does a few more things for you.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. So like, where does Belle Boomerang take place? Give us the setting. Give us the backstory behind that.
um, so in Belle Boomerang, it's very, I'd say like a light fantasy. So don't think anything like super hard, like Final
Mega
Fantasy.
Man.
Yeah, Mega Man's a good example, even though that's like a little bit more sci-fi, like kind of like that, like a little bit of a little sillier, but
Mm-hmm.
um, you play in like this kingdom. There's a king and a queen, and the opening cutscene says about all there is. There's not like a ton of backstory. There's a little bit you can dig into if you talk to some characters and stuff, but it's
Mm-hmm.
an evil wizard mage who put a curse on the king and queen, turning them into monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to venture out like various different parts of the fantasy land. You get like this sort of like um, m- monochromatic kind of map showing like how all the places connect. Um, and eventually you'll be able to encounter both the king and queen, lift their curse, and then you have to go and get the tower back from the wizard.
Okay. Okay. That's very interesting. Very interesting. Yo, Kev's Retro Gaming. What's up, man? Thanks for coming in the chat. So next question I gotta ask: who
Mm-hmm.
is Belle Boomerang as the protagonist?
Yeah, she, like a lot of those old retro mascots, a little bit of a silent protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
But I would definitely say visually cute, very colorful. I try to go for like the Mega Man, like strength and simplicity kind of design. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the designs are memorable, and a lot of like, especially the bosses in Mega Man have really fun silhouettes. But they're just a couple colors. They're pretty quick to draw. Um, if I had to pick one word to describe Belle personality wise, I guess it would
Hmm.
be righteous, heroic. When you talk to NPCs and kind of hear their accounts of Belle, that's a lot of what you
Hmm.
get, which makes
Okay.
sense. The main character.
Okay. That's different. That's different because it's something unique about Belle. You feel me? It's just something that she got that pizzazz. She got that uniqueness. She just different. She just stands out than the rest of the
Yeah.
characters,
Well,
basically.
thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I kind of stumbled upon it by accident, but I think the color scheme kind of helps with that. Especially, I mean, even in
Hmm.
modern games, but especially in like retro ones, you don't see a lot of purple thrown around a lot, especially for main
Hmm.
characters.
All right.
I think her silhouette with like the very large, like designed hair,
Hmm.
um, and kind of just her general stance and color scheme. I think it generally captures the retro aesthetic, but it doesn't really copy any one character or anything like that. It's
Right.
a
Right.
little bit of its own.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So, like, now let's talk about the stages in the actual game. So, tell us
Mhm.
about some of the stages that's actually built into Bella Boomerang.
Yeah, so one of the main like marketing lines I use for the game is that it has a ton of variety, and that was really my goal with the game.
Hmm.
Looking at some specific games like Mega Man 2, Kirby's Adventure, those kinds
Hmm.
of things, I loved how part of the fun of the game was just not really knowing what's going to be in the next level. Like
Hmm.
there's, in Mario, as much as I love Mario, you play through like some of the old Mario's, and it's like there's Goombas and grass in this level. There's probably going to be Goombas and grass in the next level.
Right.
And
Right.
you'll go through a few levels that are the same, and there's definitely a variety, especially like mechanically in Mario. There's a lot of variety. But I
Hmm.
like when you open up a level and there's just a bunch of new set pieces, a bunch of new enemies, a lot of new stuff to play with.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, like the first level in Belle Boomerang, which I use a lot in marketing, is kind of like this autumn fall forest um, with lots of oranges,
Hmm.
and you're kind of interested. Well, you're kind of immediately introduced to a power up where you can pick up and throw different fruit.
Hmm.
And you're kind of encouraged to do so because some of the enemies you can't destroy with your boomerang. And the fruit is also, even though it's limited, gets a lot of good range.
Hmm.
Um, and that kind of sets up the rest of the game. It's like you go into this new environment. It's like big and colorful. Another one that a lot of people seem to like is there's a level where you're climbing up the side of a waterfall
Right. Right.
with lots of cherry blossoms, and you can constantly see running water in the background and all these like big rocks and flowers. And in that level, once you start defeating a couple enemies, you get the ability to lob like vertical climbing bubbles.
Hmm.
And I kind of, when I build Belle Boomerang levels like those two specifically, I usually start with the power up. I start thinking of like what ability do I want this level to be tied with, and then I
Hmm.
try to come up with as many uh, little enemies or just little obstacles that fit with that power up.
Right. Right. It's very, very interesting. Makes me want to power up right now with this type of game right here. Makes me want to play it. So I got a question. This is like a two-part question. So like, what type of weapons and abilities outside of the boomerang can we expect to see actually in the game or unlock in the game?
Yeah. So I already mentioned that you can get the fruit that you throw and get the bubbles that float upwards. But to be honest, I don't think those are some of the game's most exciting power ups. Especially later on, you start to get a lot more like mobility based power ups, things that kind of deal with the environment.
Hmm.
Um, One example is you get the ability to freeze water at some point. And there'll be like moving geysers, and there'll be like pots of water that constantly change temperature, and you
Hmm.
can use your ice to traverse across those. So it's kind of like a little bit of difficult like timed platforming. You not only
Hmm.
have to know when to land on the platform, but you kind of have to get off of it before the ice melts.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
there is a sky level in the game, so you get the ability to fly at some point, which sounds really generous, but it makes the platforming even more difficult because
Hmm.
now that you have the ability to have fine-tuned air control, jumps will get a lot tighter and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Um, yeah, like I said, my goal was really variety. So I try to have a lot. I try to have some that just make you feel powerful, just kind of blow a lot of enemies out of the way at once.
Hmm.
But I also try to have some that like are used in a little bit more puzzly contexts, where you have to think a little bit about how you're going to use it, and
Hmm.
then once you execute it, you kind of have to like follow through. And
Okay,
it'll
more
take
like
some pattern recognition as well.
more like in like a timely fashion. You have to do it properly, or you can get knocked out real quick.
Hmm. Uh, so compare it to a game like Kirby again. The
Hmm.
power ups in Kirby are really fun, and you can kind of reapproach the game by bringing different power ups to different areas. In a game like Belle Boomerang, the power ups are a little bit more like of a key part of the level design.
Hmm.
So you don't really have a choice. You'll have to use the power up. It's just figuring out how to use it to get through the level.
Okay, okay, very interesting. So let's talk about the boss battles in the game. Like, do they have boss battles? Like, what type of boss battles, if there is? Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah. The boss battles are some of my favorite parts of the game. They also took some of the longest to develop, even
Hmm.
though they usually don't have a ton of like unique backgrounds. They have a lot of unique animations and they reuse concepts from the levels, but they never reuse them in the same way.
Hmm.
Um, I would say a big part of them is just pattern recognition. And I know this is a little bit, not too far, but a little bit out from other inspirations, but I looked a lot at Cuphead when designing the bosses, making a
Yeah.
very scripted and in like a gameplay sense. It's like you kind of have to get the feel of where their next attack's going to go.
Hmm.
And even though you will probably get knocked out quite a few times, none of them are really a failure because you learn a little bit more. You get better at the beginning sections, and then you uh, eventually just have to do it all in one go. You have to get like that golden run, and I think it gives you a really big sense of completion. They're just very grand. I think that's how I describe it in the marketing thing, and I think that's the best word.
Hmm.
Definitely feels like a climax.
Okay, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that. So, is there any like DLC in the future coming to this game, or are you planning on moving on to like at least a sequel to Bell Boomerang or another IP?
Um, I'm definitely open to the idea. I during development had so many ideas for like levels and enemies and stuff I didn't
Hmm.
get to use, and I would love
Right,
to
right.
put them into the game someday. Um, Partially depends on how many sales I can get on Steam, how many sales I can get on Switch,
Hmm.
um, and kind of gauging like, do people want DLC as opposed to a sequel, as opposed to something completely unique? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'm definitely going to stay active as a developer. I
Hmm.
don't know if it'll be directly tied to Bell Boomerang or not, but I would certainly love to if players showed some. Uh, if I think players would enjoy it.
Okay, dope, dope, dope. So now I'm about to ask you the multi-billion-dollar question. Okay.
Okay.
So why should people want to play Bell Boomerang?
Um, I think with a game like Bell Boomerang, and I've kind of found this, it's a bit difficult to market because it's just on Steam and stuff. There are so many pixel art games and stuff, like pixel art
Hmm.
platformers. Um, Kind of a dime a dozen. Um,
True.
I am very confident that Bell Boomerang just executes on it very well.
Hmm.
That it took Bell Boomerang was a long development process for a lot of reasons, but a lot of that went into making sure like every part of the game is memorable. Like I didn't want like any two levels to feel stale. I didn't want to just like pump out a full platformer. I really wanted like each detail to be really well thought out.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think the main reason you would buy Bell Boomerang is if you're someone who loves platformers, either new ones or old ones, and
Hmm.
wants a really polished experience, not just like your normal like $5 platformer on the store.
Okay.
I don't have a ton of name recognition. I can't charge $20 for something like this. I don't feel like because
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
a ton of name recognition, but um, I I'm pretty happy with the amount of uh, quality, because I think it's very quality over quantity, and I feel like a lot of the pixel platformers are not that way.
Okay, okay. I definitely am excited to try this game out because I definitely want to try this game out. So like
Cool.
facts. So the question I have, this is the second to last question is like to the people that may not know, like what platforms is Belle Boomerang on and when it will release to the people that don't know.
Yeah. So Belle Boomerang is on Steam today. You can go get it on Steam.
Hmm.
It released in on the well for the Nintendo Switch. If you're in the United States, you can get it right now as well. It's up on the eShop. If you're in Canada, Mexico, the rest of the Americas, or in Europe,
Hmm.
and Australia too, I think, they will be getting it on the 19th. So just a few days.
Okay, okay, okay.
So
So the
if you're a
last
Switch owner,
question. No, my fault.
yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Sorry. Continue what you're
Oh,
saying. I'm sorry.
if you're a Switch owner, it's either available now or will be available by the end of next week.
Okay, well, I'm definitely intrigued. You got me sold. Now I want to play it. So the final question is like, where can they stalk your social media? Where they could talk, like where they could stalk you about the game?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm at narwhalnutdev. I'm
Hmm.
pretty new to Twitter, but I think that's a good place. I'm gonna continue to use it. I'm also on Instagram at narwhalnut. YouTube, I'm narwhalnut. If you search narwhalnut on most
Hmm.
platforms, not platformers, I'll be either the first or second result. Those are all great places to follow. Game Jolt, I'm at narwhalnut. That's great too. And I plan
Hmm.
to keep using those places after Belle Boomerang's development. I don't plan to slow down anytime soon.
Okay. Hey, there's no reason to. And mind you, Belle Boomerang will show up at the Indie Game Showcase next month. So y'all get to see a first look at the gameplay to the people that wants to play platformers. And I'm definitely excited. I really want to play this game now. You feel me? So, we come to the end of the gamer section interview, man. Thank you again for giving us your time and energy, to talk about your game, Belle Boomerang. And yeah, I'm sold. You got me sold on the game, man. I'm sold.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really happy to have a place to talk about it.
Oh, no problem, man. Many more interviews to come. You feel me? So to everybody that's listening in and will watch it later, make sure y'all tell a friend to tell a friend about Belle Boomerang. It's out now. Y'all can play it. We about to get out of here. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the post notification bell for when we drop videos. And we out. Peace.